How does a kid born in a small Egyptian village, in a country where football was almost canceled, claw his way out of poverty just to chase a dream? How does that same kid get rejected by his own club, told he isn't good enough, only to rise 3 years later as the best player in the nation? And how does he then storm the stages of European football, survive targeted attacks and injuries in the biggest finals, and come back to claim glory as if nothing could stop him? This is the story of Mohamed Salah, rejection after rejection, setback after setback, yet destined for greatness. Born on June 15, 1992, in the village of Nagreg, Salah grew up in a world where football wasn't just a game, it was everything. Inspired by legends like Ronaldo, Totti, and Zidane, he turned a childhood dream into a journey that would redefine football history. But how did this Egyptian boy beat the odds to become one of the greatest players the world has ever seen? By the age of 7, Salah was already standing out, playing street football with his brother against opponents bigger, stronger, and older than him, and holding his own. His raw talent didn't go unnoticed, and by 14, scouts from Al Mokhaloun in Cairo had spotted him. Suddenly, the kid from Nagreg was on his way to one of Egypt's top academies, inching closer to professional football. But the journey was far from easy. Traveling 4 hours a day on multiple buses just to train meant missing school and sacrificing a normal childhood, yet Salah never complained, never gave up. At 15, his dedication paid off when first-team manager Mohamed Radwan took a bold chance, promoting him to the senior squad. Salah was still small, skinny, and weak, but his speed, vision, and talent were undeniable. A special diet and training program were put in place, sculpting his body for what would become a legendary career. But even then, the real work had only just begun. By 17, Salah's moment arrived. On May 3, 2010, he made his first team debut in a 1-1 draw against Al Mansoura. The 2010 to 2011 season saw him earn more minutes, slowly cementing a place in the starting lineup. But the goals didn't come easily. Frustration hit hard. Tears often fell in the dressing room after matches. Yet instead of breaking him, every disappointment lit a fire inside. Then came December 25th, a date that would mark the start of something extraordinary. Salah exploded forward with blistering pace, leaving defenders in his wake, and struck a low, thunderous shot that slipped under the keeper. The stadium erupted. That wasn't just a goal, it was a statement. A glimpse of the signature brilliance fans would come to expect every time he touched the ball. From that moment, Mohamed Salah wasn't just a player, he was becoming a phenomenon. But instead of breaking him, every setback, every tear, every frustrating missed chance only fueled Salah's fire to get better, to push harder, to leave a mark that could not be ignored. And finally, that moment came on December 25th, a date that would forever be etched in Egyptian football history. Salah burst forward with a pace so electrifying, defenders seemed frozen in time, chasing only shadows of the boy who was unstoppable. And then, with precision and power, he smashed the ball low and thunderous past the keeper. A strike so perfect it slipped under the crossbar as if guided by destiny itself. That goal wasn't just his first, it was the birth of a signature, a glimpse of the brilliance that would define his career. A move fans would come to expect every time he touched the ball, a statement to the world. Mohamed Salah was here, and he was ready to shine. From that moment on, Salah became indispensable to Al Mokhaloun. He featured in every single match of the 2011 to 2012 season, proving he was more than just a prodigy. He was a force, fearless and relentless, ready for any challenge that lay ahead. But just as the future seemed to be opening its doors, Egypt plunged into one of the darkest and most turbulent periods in its modern history. The revolution erupted, toppling President Hosni Mubarak and throwing the country into chaos, with political unrest and economic instability sweeping through every corner of society. Football, the game that had always been Salah's escape and sanctuary, was not immune. Stadiums turned into arenas of protest and tension, matches were disrupted, and uncertainty clouded the lives of every player. Then, tragedy struck on February 1st, 2012. The Port Said Stadium riots erupted during a match between Al Masry and Al Ahly, resulting in the deaths of 74 people and injuring hundreds more. It was a shocking, brutal moment, one that left Egyptian football paralyzed and the remainder of the domestic season canceled. For young players like Salah, the path forward seemed unclear, and yet he refused to let chaos define his destiny. Even in the darkness, Salah's talent shone. His performances had caught the eyes of the national team scouts, earning him a call-up to Egypt's Olympic squad. And it was there, in a friendly match against Swiss club FC Basel, that fate finally smiled upon him. Coming on as a substitute in the second half, Salah tore through the opposition with an unstoppable speed and unrelenting drive, scoring not one but 2 goals. The Basel president himself was astonished. He only played the second half, but I have never seen a player move with such speed in my life. That performance earned him a trial in Switzerland, and by the summer, Basel had signed him. Just like that, the boy from Negrig had escaped the turmoil that had engulfed Egyptian football and was taking the first monumental step toward a global stage. But as the story unfolds, the path would only get harder, filled with heartbreak, rejection, and challenges that would test every ounce of his determination. At 20 years old, Salah signed a 4-year deal with Basel, marking the beginning of his European adventure. Adapting to a new country, a new culture, and a new language was a battle in itself. So difficult, in fact, that Basel's manager, Heiko Vogel, was stunned by Salah's shaky start in training, convinced for a moment that he had been sent the wrong player, perhaps a twin brother. But Salah did not let the doubts stop him. He embraced the challenge, stepping into the shoes of Basel's departing star Xherdan Shaqiri, determined to carve out his own legacy. And this was only the beginning of a journey that would take him from being underestimated to becoming unstoppable. From the streets of Negrig to the bright lights of European football, from heartbreak to glory. In his very first season at Basel, Salah's development was handled with care by the club's manager, Murat Yakin, who saw the spark in the young Egyptian and knew he needed to be eased into European football. Rather than throwing him straight into the spotlight, Yakin often used Salah as an impact substitute, a role perfectly suited to his blistering pace, unstoppable dribbling, and instinct for creating chaos in the final third. And it worked. Every time he came off the bench, Salah left defenders grasping at shadows, and by the end of the season, he had scored 10 goals and provided 11 assists in 50 appearances. Basel went on to win the Swiss Super League, finish as runners-up in the Swiss Cup, and make a stunning run to the Europa League semi-finals where fate would pit them against Chelsea. Even as Basel were eliminated, Salah's electrifying performance, including a goal in one of the ties, sent ripples across Europe, announcing that a new star had arrived. The following season, 2013-14, was where Salah truly began to transcend his talent and step into superstardom. Basel was competing in the UEFA Champions League, Europe's elite competition, and Salah wasted no time making his mark. At Stamford Bridge, in one of the most memorable nights in the club's history, he scored the equalizer in Basel's shocking 2-1 victory over Chelsea. The stadium fell silent as defenders and fans alike tried and failed to keep up with his lightning-quick bursts and clever movements. But Salah wasn't done. In the return leg that November, he scored the winning goal, delivering Basel a historic triumph and showcasing the kind of player who could single-handedly change the course of a match. The football world began to take notice. Here was a winger who combined speed, skill, and intelligence in a way that made him nearly impossible to stop. By January 2014, the attention of Europe's elite clubs became impossible to ignore. Chelsea, haunted by Basel's victories and Salah's unstoppable runs, moved to sign the Egyptian prodigy for £16.5 million. Basel lost their star, but Salah left a legacy of brilliance. 20 goals, 17 assists in 79 appearances, a Swiss championship, and unforgettable moments in Europe. For Salah, the move to Chelsea was meant to be our dream come true. A step onto the world stage and a chance to make Egypt proud as the first ever Egyptian at the club. But dreams have a way of testing those who dare to chase them. At Chelsea, Salah entered a team stacked with world-class attacking talent: Eden Hazard, Willian, Oscar. all players of the highest caliber. Breaking into the starting 11 was harder than anyone could have imagined. He made his debut in February 2014 in a 3-0 win against Newcastle, showing flashes of brilliance, and then, just a month later, he scored his first goal in a spectacular 6-0 dismantling of Arsenal, the Gunners' Arsene Wenger's 1,000th game in charge, coming off the bench to slot in the 6th goal. It was a brief, shining glimpse of the player he was destined to become. April brought more evidence of his potential. In Chelsea's 3-0 victory over Stoke City, Salah opened the scoring, won a penalty, and provided an assist to performance that hinted at the greatness lurking beneath the surface. Salah's time at Chelsea was a test of patience, resilience, and determination. The dream move had tuned into a crucible, challenging him to adapt, endure, and stay focused on the bigger picture: his career, his talent, and his destiny. And then, in February 2015, fate intervened again in the form of a dramatic deadline day transfer. Salah joined Fiorentina on an 18-month loan as part of the deal that sent Juan Cuadrado to Chelsea. It was a fresh start, a second chance, and a new stage upon which he could prove the world wrong. Once again, the young Egyptian faced a crossroads fade into obscurity or rise to the challenge. Mohamed Salah, as always, chose to rise. This move to Fiorentina marked the beginning of a transformative period in his career. The struggles at Chelsea, the limited playing time, the criticism, and the obstacles he faced had only sharpened him. Now, in a new league, a new country, and a new environment, Salah could finally unleash the full extent of his talent, demonstrating why so many had believed in him since the streets of Nagreg. The challenges were far from over, but each setback, each rejection, each twist in the Jume had forged a player ready to take on the world. And as we'll see, this period in Italy would set the stage for Salah's true breakout one that would lead him from rejection to redemption, from frustration to superstardom, and ultimately to his destiny as one of football's all-time greats. Now pause for a second, because this is where the conversation gets uncomfortable. The Ballon d'Or, the award that is supposed to crown the best footballer on the planet, because when you actually lay the facts out, Mohamed Salah's treatment borders on the absurd. Since arriving at Liverpool, he has collected 9 major trophies, stacked up over 90 individual accolades, shattered club and league records. And yet, from UEFA, he's been acknowledged just once with a spot in a Team of the Year. FIFA handed him a Puskas trophy that felt less like recognition and more like a reluctant apology for years of overlooking him. And when it comes to the Ballon d'Or itself, silence, nothing, year after year. So the question becomes why? And the easy answer people give is numbers don't matter anymore, because a decade of Messi and Ronaldo completely rewired expectations, tombing historic output into something people shrug at. Meaning, when Salah produces seasons that would have defined entire eras for other legends, instead of being celebrated for standing miles above his peers, he's criticized for not matching an impossible benchmark that 2 anomalies set. But the deeper issue is that those same 2 players also reshaped how voters think success works, convincing the football world that winning the Champions League is no longer a bonus, but a requirement. Quietly transforming the Ballon d'Or from an award for the best footballer alive into a trophy for the most marketable star on the team, lifting Europe's biggest cup. And the numbers prove it, because from 2007 to 2022, the majority of winners had just won the Champions League, while in the 15 years before that, not a single recipient needed it. Even when international tournaments are factored in, very few winners actually lifted one, which exposes another uncomfortable reality. Tournaments outside Europe are still not valued the same. Comments from high-profile pundits make that clear, and for players like Salah, coming from a nation without consistent World Cup access, it quietly means that every other year he's effectively disqualified before a ball is even kicked, despite having arguably a greater impact on his country's football than many of the players ranked above him ever had on theirs, because Salah didn't join a thriving football culture. He became the reason it survived, emerging at a time when domestic football in Egypt had collapsed entirely, rising through chaos to become the nation's lifeline, dragging them back onto the global stage, carrying them to continental finals, pushing them to a World Cup, scoring historic goals while injured. Moments that for Egyptians meant more than any additional continental trophy ever could for already dominant nations. Yet year after year, the criteria shift, the goalposts move, and Salah's Ballon d'Or position seemed detached from reality. Almost as if voter fatigue set in before he even won anything. Largely because he started at a level so absurdly high that excellence became expected. And people forget that this was never meant to happen in the first place. Because he wasn't even the manager's first choice. He wasn't the marquee signing. He arrived under skepticism, mocked for returning to England, written off within days, only to flip the narrative at a speed rarely seen, forcing opinions to change with every goal, every assist, every record broken, setting a standard so ridiculous in his very first season that everything he's done since has been judged against perfection instead of reality. And that contradiction sits at the heart of why one of the most productive players football has ever seen is still somehow fighting for recognition instead of standing uncontested at the top. Even then, the story still refused to bend in his favor, because what followed felt like a masterclass in how football rewrites history in real time. Not even Ronaldo or Messi at their peaks could touch those numbers across competitions. Yet somehow the season became remembered less for Salah's dominance and more for what went wrong around him. He swept the Premier League Golden Boot, took the PFA Player of the Year, dragged Liverpool to their first Champions League final in over a decade, while scoring against literally every opponent in their path, and with Ronaldo, the only realistic rival for the Ballon d'Or, drowning in off-field controversy at the time, it genuinely felt like the door had finally swung wide open until fate intervened in the cruelest way possible. An early injury in the final robbed him of the stage. He watched from the sidelines as Liverpool's hopes collapsed in front of him, flew straight into a World Cup carrying a nation's expectations, did what little one man could by scoring twice in 3 games, and still, by the time the dust settled, the narrative had flipped completely. Luka Modric's World Cup run became the headline, a full media campaign followed, and when UEFA handed out their Player of the Year award, Salah didn't even finish second, he was pushed down to third. The following season, the noise only got louder. Accusations of being a one-season wonder forced him to evolve. He reduced the reckless dribbling, streamlined his game, became more efficient, which somehow opened the door to a new criticism altogether, that he was mechanical, emotionless, predictable, and even while the goals kept coming, just slightly slower than the absurd pace before, his Ballon d'Or ranking slid again, down to 6th, barely ahead of defenders with nowhere near his influence. But once again, numbers don't lie forever. The Golden Boots kept stacking up. Another Champions League final arrived. This time he scored. This time Liverpool lifted the trophy. Yet even that wasn't enough to protect him from revisionism. A handful of late draws, a single loss to City, and despite Liverpool recording one of the highest points totals in league history with just 1 defeat all season, the title slipped away by a single point and the verdict somehow landed on him that he had choked. Then came the Super Cup, the Club World Cup where he was the standout performer. But after a quiet international summer, the individual accolades still went elsewhere. Sadio Mane, with clearly weaker numbers, was crowned Africa's best and ranked above Salah in the Ballon d'Or, Salah himself finishing 5th, partly sabotaged by his own country's invalid ballot. An almost poetic twist in a career defined by fine margins. And yet again, he responded the only way he ever has, by producing, leading the league in both goals and assists, lifting the Premier League title with an 18-point gap, falling just 1 short of the all-time points record, and still somehow missing out on domestic recognition entirely, not even named in the PFA Team of the Year, a textbook case of fatigue setting in. But the irony is that things only grew harsher from there, because the next season, Liverpool's injury crisis stripped the team to the bone, forcing Salah into survival mode, dribbling less, assisting less, shouldering the scoring burden almost alone. And while he still secured another Golden Boot and dragged them into the top 4 against all odds, the same voices resurfaced, labeling him selfish, one-dimensional. So at nearly 30, when most players begin to fade, Salah reinvented himself yet again, blending maturity with creativity, maintaining elite scoring while elevating his playmaking to new heights, piling up over 30 goal contributions before Christmas, prompting Klopp to publicly call him the best player in the world, powering Liverpool into contention on every front. And even then, after everything, the Ballon d'Or placement settled at 7th, as if his excellence had become background noise. And that's the question this story keeps circling back to: how long can a player perform at a historic level before greatness becomes expected, before brilliance stops shocking people? Because if you're still here listening to this, ask yourself honestly, are we watching a footballer fall short of recognition, or are we watching one of the greatest Premier League careers ever unfold in real time while we argue about aesthetics? Let me know in the comments where you truly rank Mohamed Salah in football history. And if you want the full story of how perception shapes legacy in this sport, make sure you subscribe, because this debate is far from over.